Hello! Welcome back to Brenda's Books. Thank you so much for coming back to listen to more of Sara's War. If you would like to follow Brenda's Books online, I am on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Today we are on Chapter 14 of Sara's War. This chapter kinda stems from a personal experience I had, although it's very different, and I'll tell you about that afterwards, because I know you're anxious to hear the chapter. So, here we go. Chapter 14, Your Majesty. I pace back and forth beside my bed. It is 2200 hours. I know I should get some shut-eye, but I'm terrified to sleep while I'm here alone. How am I supposed to protect myself while sleeping? Lexi is gone and won't be back for a month. I already locked the door, but that didn't stop Mr. Evil. Why would it stop another Satan? I rub my hands up my forehead and through my hair. Why do I feel this way? Of course I know why, but I refuse to think on it further. I glance at a picture of Lexi and her late husband, which makes me think of Ryan. Yes, thinking of Ryan will help me feel better. I pull my suitcase out from under my bed and reach in the side pocket for my journal. I stand up and stretch for a moment, then flop backward onto my bed. The rusty springs squeak in protest. I flip to the back cover of my journal and stare at the picture pasted there. I'm wearing a sparkly violet shirt with my curled blonde hair flowing past my shoulders. Ryan stands next to me with his arm around my waist. His bright blue eyes penetrate me with aching memories of him. Now my own eyes fill with tears. I snap my journal shut. Why did I look at that? I sit up and put my legs over the edge of the bed. I remember another picture in my suitcase. This one is stuffed underneath the matting. I haven't looked at that picture in over a year. If I did, I would break into pieces for sure. Yet somehow I take a slight comfort knowing it's there. One day I will bring it out, after I forgive myself for what I did. But the chances of that happening are near impossible. I really need to sleep, but I can't. How I wish I wasn't allergic to diphenhydramine so I could take some sleeping pills. I pick up a medical journal lying on my nightstand and read it until my eyelids close. I find myself doing this every night for the next 4 weeks. I exit the clinic room of an ear-infected patient and turn a sharp corner to where the circulation desk is in the main hallway. A strawberry blonde nurse sits perfectly straight and square in her seat. She looks up at my approach. A smile of relief spreads across her face. She pushes up her thin silver glasses and stands to greet me with a quick, "Good morning, doctor." "Good morning, Nurse Jones. How are you this morning?" "I'm well. There are several messages for you on the mainline voicemail from families of soldiers who live near the base." Then she reads them to me from her own handwritten note. I answer the questions and tell her to call the patients back to relay my message. She nods her tiny ponytail, sits at the desk, and jots down a few more notes on her notepad. How different her conduct toward me is now, especially compared to a month ago. The same goes for all the nurses. Well, except for Molly Sanders. "Nurse Jones, when did you start trusting me?" I can't help but ask. She glances up from her paper with surprise. Well, after your successful surgery on Petty Officer Harrison, I guess. Anybody who can do that must know what they're talking about. She smiles, looking shy. I tap the desk lightly with my hand. "Well, I want you to know I appreciate it." Jones shakes her head with a breathless laugh. "We are so glad you are here," she says. "You wouldn't believe what chaos we were in." "I believe it." She smiles up at me. "Yes, you saw how this place used to be." She lifts a finger. "But in our defense, every doctor we have ever had gets called to serve in combat, and they all end up—" She pauses, looking slightly chagrined. "Never mind. But we are glad you're here, Doctor." She smiles again. "I'm glad to be here." I'm still grinning as I enter another clinic room. Randy stands at the small counter, disinfecting a thermometer. He picks up a file in front of him and hands it to me. Just what I came looking for," I say. "Thanks." Randy nods and continues his task. This broadens my smile as I see all my harping about disinfecting medical instruments is actually working. You're in a good mood today, Randy notes. Have you looked around at this place, Nurse Reynolds? I ask with excitement. I open my arms wide. Isn't it amazing? Randy smiles back, but looks a little troubled. Yes, it's very clean, he replies. It only took 72 hours of elbow grease. Ah, but it's worth it, right? People might actually get healed from a disease here rather than getting a new one, I exclaim. Randy smiles again as he continues scrubbing. You may be right about that, Doctor. You bet I am, I say. Ah, would you look at that? Somebody labeled all the drawers just like I asked. That was Nurse Sanders, Randy informs me. Nurse Sanders did this? What an angel. Did she organize the supply closet as well? I actually found a clipboard this morning. You think one person could have tackled that? That was all of us, Randy informs me with a little exasperation. Teamwork, that's what I like to hear, I say. I examine the contents of several drawers. Even I'm surprised at how much this recent organization pleases me. I open the drawer labeled swabs and look inside. Empty in here too. Nurse Reynolds, would you refill the swabs in all the clinic rooms for me? I ask. We seem to be running low in most of the rooms. This would be a huge help since a lot of our patients have been coming in with sore throats. Yes, Your Majesty, Randy says flatly. His tone, although subtle, sounds bitter. I stop short and glance up at him from my crouched position. Excuse me? I'm sorry, Randy mumbles. Yes, I'll do that. I stand slowly and shut the cupboard door. What's going on, Reynolds? I ask warily. I try to get him to look at me, but he keeps his eyes on his thermometer and continues to wipe it needlessly. Nothing, he says in a low voice. I'm sorry. I lean against the counter and fold my arms. What did I do that's bothering you so much? Feel free to be honest. You didn't do anything, Randy says, sounding frustrated, scrubbing harder now. Did I say something? No, Randy exclaims, with more irritation seeping out. You're so annoyingly careful with what you say. I sigh. Randy is never like this. He's usually the cheerful one around here. Just spit it out. It will be better to get it off your chest. We need to be able to work together, Reynolds. Randy sets his thermometer down on the counter with a little force and looks me straight in the eye. First of all, you refuse to call me Randy. That's because we're on duty, I explain. Randy sighs and scratches his carrot-colored head. Okay, that's fine. He turns his attention to the blank wall beside us. What else? It doesn't matter, he says, looking back at me. It obviously matters to you, I point out. And if I'm the one making you mad, then you're not making me mad, Randy yells, throwing his arms up in the air. I hesitate and fight back a smile. You do realize you were yelling at me when you said that, right? Randy laughs once and shakes his head in embarrassment. I'm sorry, he says. Don't apologize, just tell me what's wrong, I say, keeping my tone mild. Randy runs a hand through his hair. I don't want to talk about it, he whispers. I shrug. Well, okay. But if I really am the problem, then I'm the only one who can fix it. Randy stares at me in silence. I promise I won't be angry. I won't even be offended, I think. It's not that big of a deal. I just can't believe you made it to the top so fast, that's all. I'm not surprised, really, I'm just... He trails off. I stare at him for a moment before I speak. Nurse Reynolds, just because people call me doctor now doesn't mean your work is less important. I'm not talking about your title, Randy says, a little flustered. We all knew that was going to happen. Oh, well, that's nice of you, but I still don't understand. Randy swallows hard and bites his lip. A couple of years ago, a nurse went to the army ball with a captain, and a year before that, a medic went to the ball with a major. But you are surpassing them all by going with the lieutenant colonel. And I was going to... Wait a minute, I interrupt, holding up my hand. Who told you that? I'm not... Well, well, well. I turn my head to the new sassy voice in the room. So what's the plan now? To elope? Nurse Sanders asks in a mocking sweet tone, as she leans her thin body against the doorway. Her dark black hair is pulled tightly back, except for her half bangs that slip to one side of her forehead. If it weren't for the scowl on her face, she would be a very pretty woman. She glowers at me, then at Randy, with her big brown eyes. Randy returns the glare, although his seems more tired. "Molly, don't do that," Randy says lazily. "You don't know—" "I know a lot more than you think I do," she snaps. Instantly, I feel like an intruder in a private conversation. "Maybe I'll leave you two alone," I announce as I step toward the door. "Wait, let me get your swabs," Randy says with sudden urgency as he starts to follow me. I hesitate as I stop mid-step. Randy abruptly comes to a halt, nearly bumping into me. He obviously doesn't want to be part of the scuffle either. I glance back at Sanders, who is still scowling. Yes, that would be good. And, Nurse Sanders, why don't you help me fill prescriptions?" I slide past her through the doorway in hopes to avoid any protest. "Oh, so because you can't be alone with him, I can't either?" she gripes. What is with the attitude? "Excuse me," I say, turning around to face her. "Well, it's a little selfish, don't you think?" she accuses. "Don't give me a case for insubordination, Sanders," I say. "You're way out of line." Honestly, would she say this to anyone else? Nurse Sanders continues to glare at me, but a mixture of shame and worry flush her face. I'm sure she knows if I were to file her for misconduct, it would cause her a lot of trouble, and perhaps suspend her position. Of course, I won't do it for something like this, but she doesn't know that. "Prescriptions, please. Let's go," I say, motioning with my head for her to follow me. Sanders doesn't take her eyes off me, and slowly shuffles her feet forward. Randy quickly broadens his step while straightening his shoulders, and walks briskly down the hall, not looking at either of us as he passes. Besides Sanders' awkward apology and my acceptance, filling prescriptions is more or less as silent as a one-man prison cell. It certainly is freezing like one, as there is no heating in our small pharmaceutical room. I want to make conversation, but I'm still trying to make sense of the previous 15 minutes with Miss Attitude over here and Mr. Confused. Sanders is as melancholy as a puppy sent out in the cold. She's a good worker, though, and I'm glad to have her beside me. I'm screwing on a lid to a bottle of amoxicillin when I hear a soft knock at the door as it creaks open. Nurse Jones pokes her head in the room. "Excuse me, doctor," she says, squinting through her glasses. "The new nurse would like to meet you." "Oh, we have a new nurse!" I exclaim. "Excellent!" I set the amoxicillin back in its proper place in the medicine cabinet. Jones pushes the door wide open to reveal the newcomer. She's older than I expected. Older than 50 at least. "This is Dr. Andrews," Joan introduces me. "And I know you have already met Nurse Sanders." The woman winks at Sanders, who replies with a half smile. "How do you do?" I say, stepping forward and extending my arm for a friendly handshake. The woman takes my hand loosely. "I'm fine, dear," she says as she stares at me with a baffled look. "Goodness, child, you are far too young to be a doctor. How old are you?" Oh, good grief. I can already tell this woman is going to push my buttons. "Old enough to be a doctor, ma'am," I reply stiffly. And then she laughs a high, shrill sound which reminds me of a hyena. "Are you sure you didn't get promoted because of your looks?" My cheeks flush with heat. That is it. This woman, in just 30 seconds, has almost pushed me over the edge. "I didn't catch your name, ma'am," I say coolly. It's all I can do to keep my voice even. Her laughing subsides a bit. "It's Peggy Giles, sweetie." "I am not your sweetie," I say sternly. "Now, if you will excuse me, I have work to do." I step past her through the doorway, too irate to think clearly of what else to do. "Oh, have I offended you, honey?" she calls to me. I spin around to face her. "My title is Doctor, Nurse Giles. That's what you will call me. Nothing else. Save your pet names for your pet pup." In my peripheral vision, I can see Sanders and Jones' eyes widen simultaneously. "Nurse Jones, show the new nurse around relief," I command. "She needs something productive to do." I spin around again and stride down the hall, my heart racing with anger. And that concludes Chapter 14. So the story I was going to tell you about is when I was in college, in my early 20s, and I was working at a retail store to try to earn enough to go to college. And since I looked a lot younger than I was, a lot of people thought I was like a young teenager, and I was constantly getting asked how old I was, and it really, really irked me because sometimes people would treat me like a child. And so those names like Sweetie and Honey, they just all felt really condescending to me at the time. And so I think that memory kind of came out when I wrote this chapter. Anyway, so I can kind of relate to Sara not getting the respect that she deserves. So anyway, it's a little tidbit into a writer's life. I hope you come back next week for chapter 15, which is called Busybodies Anonymous. If you want to find out more about Brenda's books, you can visit brendasbooks.net. Until next time, take care.